welcome to Patrick and Friends Music. I'm Andrea, I'm a production coordinator in the music industry, and today we're going to be talking about building a tour and how to get organized for the start, prep, and advancing of the tour itself. If you saw our last videos, I gave an explanation of what a production coordinator was. To sum that up, the production coordinator is the person who holds the tour together. We're essentially the glue of the organization, and we keep everything on track and running throughout the entire tour. A production coordinator's responsibilities shift from tour to tour, but whether you're on a very small van and trailer tour all the way up to an arena tour, your main responsibility is taking tasks away from the tour manager and the production manager so that the entire operation can run as smooth and efficient as possible. Like I touched on in a previous video, the production coordinator doesn't have anything to do with the routing of the tour. So the beginning of a tour cycle for me would be when we're brought on by the production manager or the tour manager and shown the routing of the show. What that means is where we're playing on what days, in what cities, and what venues. From there, you can start organizing your tour. Being extremely organized is key to being a good production coordinator. I'm very lucky that I've gotten to work with my production manager for the past 4 years. So me and him already have systems in place that we like to use to stay organized and on top of everything that we do. It's very essential to get to know your tour manager and find ways that you guys can work together. The way that I choose to organize my show dates is in Dropbox, making a different folder and file for each show where the show and the date and the place are all on the same line. This will help you later on the tour so that you can access and find everything as easy as possible. It's also important to remember that your Dropbox needs to be accessed by the tour manager, the production manager, and in most cases, the manager as well. So everybody's going to have eyes on all your files. It's important that everything is labeled really clearly and extremely easy to find. There'll be many situations where you'll be on the bus, in an airport, on a plane. You might not have good Wi-Fi, and you'll need to access all of those things. A quick little search in your Dropbox on your phone to be able to pull up any document at all that you can need is very, very essential. So after you organize all of your show dates, the next thing that we would do is create a personnel list. Although personnel on tours shifts depending on the show, if you're doing a festival, if you're in Europe, if you're in Australia, the core crew always remains essentially the same. So what I would do next is gather as much personnel information as possible. I have a personnel sheet that I like to use in Excel, and I would send this out to everybody and also collect all of their passport information, their visa information if they're from other countries, their second passport information, their medical info, emergency contacts, and all the little details about their lives, including birthdays and blood type and dietary restrictions. As a production coordinator, you need to know all of this because you're planning the meals for the shows, and you need to be able to contact any of their family or friends if something were to go wrong. A fun little touch that I like to do as a production coordinator is put everybody's birthdays immediately into our tour calendar. It's important that you try to make your touring crew feel remembered and important on the tour because crew morale is very essential when you're out on the road for 2 years and you all live on a bus together. So that's a fun little tip for all the new production coordinators out there. As you're inputting all of the passport information onto your new Excel sheet, make sure you check everybody's passport expiration dates. When you're doing visa applications on an international tour, a lot of them have very different requirements on passport information, and if passports are going to expire in 3 months, 6 months, it's all very crucial to know. So I always make a note if somebody's passport is expiring in the next year or two because that will have to be handled by the tour. Another important piece of information to have on your personnel Excel sheet is everybody's shirt sizes and shoe sizes. A lot of vendors send swag and merch to the crew and the band, so I like to get all of this information very early on so it's all in one place, accessible in the Dropbox for everybody on the team. Now that you have all your personnel in one place, it's time to make a plan with your production manager. You and your production manager will be working very closely on the day-to-day operations of the show itself. I like to always advance as much as I can with my production manager. So what we have currently is an Excel sheet with all of the essential questions that we're gonna have to ask the venue. This includes things like, where do the trucks park? Where do the buses park? Is there shore power? Will there be showers available to us? If so, how many showers? When we're allowed to load in, show times, power requirements, and so on. Every production manager works differently, so that's why it's important to get with your production manager in the beginning of the tour right away and make a plan and make an Excel sheet based on what they think is important and what you think is important. I have my own Excel sheet with my own advancing, an Excel sheet with myself and my production managers advancing, and an Excel sheet with myself and my tour managers advancing, because we all handle different things, but we all work together at the same time. So it's just very important to figure out what your production manager wants to see, what your tour manager wants to see, and then what you need to see, and keep everything separate. The next step in getting ready to build your tour is figuring out your budget. On a small tour, you might be responsible for the entire budget. On a much larger tour, the budget is going to be split up with the production manager, yourself, and your tour manager. There are a lot of times where the production coordinator won't see any part of the budget at all. There are times when the production coordinator will be responsible for a large percentage of that budget, including a hospitality budget or a catering budget, and sometimes even the crew hotel budget. Depending on the budget you're given, again, it's very important to set up an Excel sheet and how you want to track your budget. This is a lot of setting up of sheets, but it makes the tour way, way easier in the future, and it helps keep everything and everyone on track. The most successful production coordinators, production managers, tour managers, any type of manager in the industry is somebody who has all of these things in place. There are a couple other Excel sheets that I love to make before we even get out on the road. That includes a flight sheet, a flight grid that just tracks every single person's flight, their name, their frequent flyer numbers, and when they're entering and leaving every city. Do this by date, do this by tour cycle, do this by city, however you need to plan it to be the most organized that you can be. I like to make transportation grids for each city because you're going to have many different runners and many different vehicles picking everybody up. And I also like to make hotel grids way ahead of time as well. If all these things are in place, it makes it much easier on the tour to just input information as you go instead of having to stop in the middle of a 20-hour workday when 15 people are asking you to do a million things and create an entire sheet. Everything's there for you, and you can just input as everything is happening around you. Now that your Excel sheets are all out of the way, all the boring stuff is done, the next two most important things would be bus booking and hotel booking. Buses get booked up extremely quickly. When it's festival season, which are the summer months, they usually get booked a whole entire year in advance. So pretty much as soon as you know your routing, you want to be in touch with busing companies, asking them how many vehicles are available, and then which buses you want to request for your artist versus your crew. Tours can range anywhere from 1 bus to 20 buses, so depending on what you need to jump on that immediately. Booking hotels works in the same way, especially for festivals, because there'll be thousands of people and hundreds of bands in the same city for that festival. So what you want to do is book or at least block rooms as soon as possible. Hotel blocking is just coordinating with the hotel a group of rooms, 40 rooms, 50 rooms, 60 rooms, whatever you need, and not necessarily giving them all the names for the rooms yet. That can always be filled in later on, but if you can block out a rough number of rooms that you will need, then the hotel won't get overbooked and you're not going to be struggling for 60 rooms a couple weeks before the festival. This next bit applies for international touring. What I like to do before the tour even starts, if we're going internationally, is just taking a quick look at what the visa processes would be for those countries. Australia and Japan have very specific, very grueling visa processes. Places like Europe are a little bit easier, but it also varies depending on where the person is from. If they're a person who works in the UK, working for an American band, or an American citizen working for an Australian band, there are going to be many different rules and many different processes for all of that. So it's important, even though you're not starting the visa process yet, to just make yourself roughly familiar with what you're going to need and how much time you're going to need for each. That's crucial. Places like South America require a couple months to get everything in place. So you always want to make sure that you're very much on top of that. Another thing to note about the visa process is sometimes you have to send your actual passport to that country. Places like Japan, you have to send your passports out. So if you're going to be traveling internationally, in the time that you need to send your passport out, you'll either need to coordinate getting everybody on the tour a second passport or try to change some of the tour dates, some of the visa processing dates. So that's why it's very crucial to know where you're going, what the rules are for getting all of your crew members' visas into that place. The last thing we're going to be talking about for the prep period before the tour even starts is building out your rider. A rider is a document that we get to send the venue outlining specific things that we expect to be at the venue before we even arrive. This includes things such as hospitality and what is going to be in each of the dressing rooms before we even get there. Also on the rider are catering details, how many people you're trying to feed, what the dietary restrictions are, when you would like to eat, and all of the meal details. Some artists ask for clothes to be on their rider, some ask for specific coffee or specific wines, but essentially it's just what we ask for and demand before we even show up. So day of show, when we're there, essentially all of those items are already accounted for. A lot of bands already have a rider that's usually in use. The production coordinator might be asked to just revamp that rider. If you're building a rider completely from scratch, it's important to talk with your band and your artists. I even like to get some input from the crew to make sure that we're getting items that everybody likes. When it comes to the band, you want to get the exact brand of chips and juice and wine that they're asking for. A lot of times with the crew, you're going for more general things. If there's somebody who's gluten-free, you want to make sure there's gluten-free crackers. If there's somebody with an allergy, you want to make sure that that is not included on the rider. But you don't want to give your crew too much leeway into the rider, especially when there are hundreds of people on the crew. That could lead to absolute chaos. So if you are building a rider from scratch, your tour manager, your production manager, and your band's input are the most important things. It's very important to keep your rider as organized as possible. That is the key word of the day. These documents are anywhere from 7 to 20 pages long, depending on the band that you work for and how specific they want to get. But keeping it in sections is how I like to keep my rider. Dressing rooms first, how many rooms you require, what you would like in each room, then getting into the catering aspect and going from there. The production coordinator will never really have to make the rider completely alone. The tour manager will be a huge, huge help in doing this because they are the ones who's with the band most of the time, but you'll likely have to organize it and format it and make it presentable. You will be sending this out to the venues in your advance and coordinating everything to be their day of show, so you need to know your rider as a production coordinator. I'll be talking more about how your organized rider fits into the day of show in my next video, so please make sure you subscribe and check out the next Patrick and Friends. Thank you so much for watching.